Capture the passion.
Welcome back to CPTP Season 3, Episode 8. Today we have a very special guest, Mr. Glenn Heap, and he is a therapist at Rio Hondo, and he's going to tell us about the experience of seeking mental health. Glenn, tell us about yourself.
Well, I'll tell you a little bit where I was born and raised first. I was born in Connecticut, lived there the first 6 years of my life, and then went to a little town in Arizona for 4 years. Then moved to suburban Chicago for 4 years. And then we moved to the San Francisco Bay Area when I was heading into 8th grade.
Okay.
And when I was in Chicago, suburban Chicago, I had a lot of anxiety. I went to a school that was really high pressure, and I internalized that. My father was a university administrator. He was a vice president at Chicago State University. A little bit of a perfectionist, I think, wanted me to be perfect, or at least I felt he did.
Yes.
And so that led me to develop a lot of anxiety. And so fortunately, my mom took me in to see a therapist, and she taught me how to see the world in a different way.
Yeah.
It was a little more peaceful and a lifetime that allowed me to seek happiness more than perfection. And so when I was in high school, I read a lot of self-help books and probably decided when I was 15 that I wanted to be a therapist. And I'm one of those rare people. I never changed my major.
That's amazing. In previous episodes, we talked about the influence of family into pretty much pressuring children into what the parents want their children to study or what they want them to be, and not giving them that. Interesting that you bring up that it brought a lot of anxiety at you. At that time, did you know what anxiety felt like?
No, I didn't. I mean, I experienced the physical symptoms of anxiety, but I thought that's how everybody felt. And I think I felt that I wasn't enough, and probably that nobody was enough, and that in life we were just supposed to work harder, and harder, and that was the purpose of it.
Right. Yeah. That's something. It's a cultural norm from. I'm Mexican born. In my Mexican culture, it's about, especially if you're a man, you're the provider, you're the breadwinner. You have to work, and the harder you work, the better you are, and the more defined you become.
That's right. The more value you have.
Right. Exactly. Yes. I was an adult. It's like that's so wrong into the way the culture was. But I'm curious to know. Were you able to express your emotions at a young age?
No. So I think as I worked with the therapist, it's funny, I don't remember her name, but I remember her face and the things that she said, and, owe everything to her.
Yeah.
She maybe passed away now. But she taught me to let myself feel, and that as a human being, we feel everything. We feel sadness and fear and anger, but we also can feel peace and joy and accomplishment. I think she taught me to be able to feel good even when I wasn't number one. I think I felt I had to get straight A's to have any worth. I was on the wrestling team in the junior high. I had to feel, I had to be the champion wrestler, and she just taught me to enjoy the moment, to enjoy wrestling, and to enjoy learning. One of her assignments was for me to get a C, and I fulfilled that assignment, and she wanted me to see that the world didn't stop spinning when I got a C.
Wow, that is so powerful. Like, you said to get a C is like, wait, what? I thought it was 100. Because that's what I was told. One of the things that I tell my daughters, I have 2, an 11 and a 6-year-old, is do your best. If your best is a C, congratulations. If your best is an A, congratulations. It's not going to change the way I feel about you. And you're going to see that life still goes on.
Well, and I think, Jorge, you just said key. It's not going to change the way I feel about you. I think for me, growing up with my parents, my mother was going to love me no matter what.
Right.
But I felt that my father's love was contingent on me being real successful. And I think that it was.
What, did you just develop that notion that it was contingent based on your
Oh,
performance?
I
Or was it
I
articulated?
experienced
You
that.
experienced it.
Yeah,
Okay, okay.
it wasn't articulated, but when I was on top, then there was, praise, and not just praise, but even just body language
Yeah.
that you're enough and you're worth it. There's a quote I love from Maya Angelou that I've shared 100 times. I'll make it 101 with you. And I think we can change the word success. We can interchange it with happiness. But Maya Angelou says, success is liking yourself, liking what you do, and liking how you do it. And I think happiness also is liking yourself, liking what you do, and liking how you do it. And I just love it because in that definition of success and happiness, GPA isn't mentioned, gender isn't mentioned, degrees aren't mentioned, the zip code you live in, and I could go on and on.
Right.
And so as I found peace and happiness and purpose and meaning in my life that didn't involve me comparing myself to others, then it led me to want to help others to find that. Mm-hmm. And so being here at Rio Hondo College, where there's students feeling lots of pressure, whether it's from families, peers, professors, or just something inside. Maybe they've internalized that message that I'm only a worthwhile person and I only deserve to have joy if I finish college and community college in 2 years and college in 4, or if I never change my and just to help them be in the moment and enjoy studying, enjoy being a student, enjoy a friendship, and whether I'm the best or not at something, if I enjoy doing it, shouldn't I be able to do it? Even if I'm an average pickleball player, do I have to quit because I'm average? If I'm an average piano player, should I not play the piano anymore? What if I like it? Shouldn't I be able to do it? And so I think this notion that we have to be in the top 25%, reality TV, people getting voted off the island and things like that. We're given messages, social media, how many followers do you have? Right? And to be able to just be.
Yeah, in my mind, as I'm hearing you speak, a lot of it is resonating, and I sort of am separating intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation, right?
Right.
And into how society usually values our worth, our accomplishment based on what other people think,
right,
what it means to them, not necessarily what it means to myself. Tell us what you do here at Rio Hondo when students come into you. Is that an approach that you use, or what are some approaches that you can share with us into helping them get more intrinsically motivated?
So when a student first comes, right, I'm going to ask them what brings them into the office. I'm going to share the limits of confidentiality with them so that they can feel safe and secure, and it's going to be a place where they're not judged. Of course, they need to know that if I become aware that there's a child being abused now or an elderly person, if there's a dangerous situation, but 99% of the time, everything they tell me is just for us, which means it's really just for them. And so as they tell me what brings them in, probably the next thing I'm going to do with them is learn about their world. And so I'll do a little genogram, and that's the graph of their family. And I'll ask them where they were born and raised, and who were their caregivers, and what was the role of their family and the culture that they were in. And then we may look at which of those, you were explaining, Jorge, that a lot of times the value society places on somebody, the worth that we put on somebody is how society views them. So many times their clients have internalized that by what their family thinks or their cultural group thinks or their friend thinks. And so as we look at that, I'll try to help them ask themselves, hey, what do you want? Who are you anyway? I know your dad thinks this. I know your mom thinks this. Your significant other thinks this. Your boss thinks this. Your professor thinks that. What do you think? What do you want? And who are you? And then hopefully there's a freeing that can take place. Now, remember too that a lot of students that come in have experienced some level of trauma in their lifetime. And so in addition to helping them learn to be more intrinsically motivated, we need to give them a place so that they can process some of the things that happen to them that may have been, unfair, unwarranted. Because once in a while, victims of trauma and abuse maybe unconsciously feel that they were to blame for some of it.
Right. Yes, this notion that it was my fault.
Mm-hmm.
I deserved it.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you a little glimpse of my cultural background. Many times I've heard it through my parents, through uncles, even grandparents, that when we discipline you, and usually it's by definition child abuse, with spanking or with a rod, whatever is in the vicinity that they can use to whoop you, then that's
for your own good.
Because we love you.
Yeah.
And if I don't love you, then I don't do this. I remember one time.
I spare the rod, I spoil the child.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes, exactly. I remember one time telling my dad they don't love me.
Oh wow!
It made it even worse. I got a tooth knocked out.
Oh my goodness!
And my mom comes to me and reinforces he does it because he loves you. And I'm crying, sobbing, telling no, love doesn't hurt. And I was probably middle school, middle that age of not knowing who I was, trying to fit in. Am I a gangster? Am I a tiger? Am I a skater? What am I? But I don't even have this sense of belonging at home either. So I was struggling with so much of my own identity, and going home and being hit because, again, culturally speaking, that's the way we raise boys. I honestly felt that I'm bad. So my self-worth just continued to diminish every single time that I was disciplined, by definition of what my culture defines as discipline. So growing up now as an adult, I struggle with that a lot. When I make a mistake, I'm very hard on myself.
There's an example, Jorge, of what we're talking about.
Right.
That internalized belief that I made a mistake, and if I love myself, I need to beat myself up.
Yes.
And while maybe I'm not going to do it with a chancla or with the belt, I'm going to do it verbally with myself and tell myself I'm less than, because if I really care about myself, I need to beat it out of myself or hate myself out of it.
Verbally aligns with psychological maltreatment, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the one that's probably the hardest one to, and from my understanding, probably one of the hardest ones. All types of abuse is hard to overcome, but psychologically maltreated because I've internalized everything that was told to me, right? I'm worthless.
Because the bruises will heal.
They'll go away.
Right? And you can get an implant or a root canal and a cap, right? But if the belief system can be self-perpetuating until that is healed, right, through the therapy, that I don't have to believe that love shouldn't hurt. I wanted to ask you real quick, do you think your parents believed that was a sign of their love for you?
I don't think they believed it. I just think they normalized it.
Okay.
I think my parents...
they grew up with it,
they
too.
Grew up with,
the generation they grew up in, and maybe even more severe.
Yeah, my mom tells me, oh, you guys had it easy. And in my perspective, obviously, because we lived it, it's man, we had bad. But when I hear, before my dad passed, and he'd say the stories, is the way he was disciplined, my mom, the way she was disciplined, it's and you had it bad. But so their belief is that this is the way, because they turned out to be okay, whatever okay to them was. They believe that if I want my children to be okay, then this is the way that I have to discipline them. So now I grow up into thinking oh, damn, I turned out to be okay, but I'm not okay. Okay, by definition, if you look at the resume, yeah, it's okay, it's okay. But if you look at my state of mind, my emotional being, that's something that you can't see, I'd argue that. Right. So I'm curious to know, I'm a real Hondo student. I come to you. What are some of the steps that goes before getting the services of talking to you?
Well, there's not many steps,
Great. Okay.
which is the good news. So you could go right into our office, which is in the Student Services Building, second floor, SS 230. We have a wonderful Student Services assistant, Nubia Figueroa, and you would just talk with her to get on my calendar. We also will probably be re-implementing. We do have a way you can just go online and sign up.
Okay.
Yeah, and that will be on our website in the fall. So a student could actually just go to the website. There's a QR code. They could scan it, and they could fill out the quote unquote paperwork, and be able to see me or one of our other therapists. We're in a little bit of transition right now where they're going to hire a couple of other therapists and hopefully a director soon.
Amazing.
But then you would come in, and if you want to, I can do a little demonstration for you if you want to be a client and come in my office.
Oh, that would be fascinating.
Are you up for that?
I'm really up for that. But before we
Sure.
jump into that, what are some benefits that you think students should consider coming to seek your guidance? Because I think that through my understanding of it, and again, my cultural upbringings, working with young children, I'm a preschool teacher and also teach at the University of Cal State LA and East LA College. We talk about mental health. We talk about emotions, but it's different talking about it than actually talking to someone that can help me understand myself better. Do you see that out there in the field, or is it more of like we're finally normalizing to prioritize mental health? What do you see?
I think we're on our way to normalizing prioritizing mental health, but I think there still are some barriers and some ideas out there that aren't true. We'll say if somebody in our family or a friend is struggling a little bit, we'll say, you need to see a therapist.
Right.
Like there's something wrong with
overgeneralize it all of a sudden, right?
Also, if someone goes to the hospital because they're a danger to themselves or others, it's the Welfare and Institution Code 5150 that allows that to happen against their will, and people will use that as you need to be 5150 or I'm going to 5150 you, and that almost, I think, it feels punitive.
Right.
That sometimes people are going to therapy, because they're punished, or maybe the court has ordered it, or maybe their children were taken away by the Department of Children and Family Services, and so sometimes people can see therapy
like it's a consequence, right?
Like it's a thank you, exactly. Like it's a consequence for a bad action, and it's has to be corrective so that society can accept them. Instead of someone saying, I want to learn more about myself. I want to learn how to feel emotions without being hijacked by emotions. Maybe I have a good romantic relationship, but I want it to be better. Maybe I'm enjoying being a parent, but I want a little help and guidance in my family. I do think there are more people that are being open, that they receive therapy. I remember Meta World Peace.
Yeah.
A few years ago, I think it was in the Lakers' last championship.
Was, yeah.
He said, I want to thank my therapist.
Yeah.
I was like, awesome. I appreciate that he said that. So I think we're on our way to doing that. But I do think that some people still see it as punitive, or a sign that you're less than, or a sign that you're weak.
Yeah.
And also a sign that you're telling tales out of school. Because I'm going to say some things that my spouse did or my parents did, and is someone going to be mad at me? Yeah. Am I ratting someone out?
Right. As I hear you say that, I think too, when I spoke to my parents that I needed to go see a therapist, I requested to speak to mom and dad, and we sat down, and my dad is bawling, but he's not making eye contact. So he's here, but he's not looking at me, and he's crying, and I see him very emotional. Wow. And then I said to them, I'm gonna go see a therapist. And my dad, again, not making eye contact, said, If it's going to help you, then do it. And my mom said, Jorge, pero no estás loco.
There you go.
Jorge, but you're not
Not
crazy. And I said, I don't want to get crazy. That's why I want to go. And it was more of, I want to learn more about myself into why do I feel the way I do? Why do I see things the way I do? And how can I get better? Those were my three intentions into going to see therapy. Was I found it. I was in a point in my life where the anger that I was carrying was really impacting my relationships. And I didn't know where it was coming from. It was more of like, why do I continue to feel like so much anger when I'm coming to work and I have, like, these people have absolutely nothing to do with it, right? I saw a great therapist. I have two great therapists that I've worked with. I have one of them that I'm currently working with, and amazing. My previous therapist said to me, think of you as you're standing anywhere you want in the world, and I give you a shovel, and you start digging. Where are you going to go? And down. So what are you going to do? And I said, I want to understand myself. And go, well, then keep digging. So there I am digging, and then I come back to her one time and I said, I'm digging, and I find myself being more stuck in that hole. And she's taking a sip of coffee, and she says, good, keep digging. And then eventually she says, if you're digging on earth, where are you going to get to? And I said, you're going to get to the core of the earth. And she takes a sip. Keep digging till you get to your core. And I said, gosh, I hate going to therapy, but I love going to therapy. And the reason why I say I hate it was because it was an opening of the floodgates. Yes. Of emotions, of crying and uncontrollably saying, why am I feeling this way? After the fact, it's like, I get it. I understand it. And working with my college students as I share experiences with them, the idea is that I'm going to go to therapy and you're going to solve my problems.
That's not true.
Right? But I go to therapy and you're asking me more questions and I find myself in that deeper hole. What does it look like?
So at Cal State LA, where I've been this year, I'm supervising 7 interns that are learning to be therapists. And I brought in another therapist to just say, hey, her name's Zara. I said, Zara, what can you tell them? What are some important things to remember being a therapist? And this is what she said. She said, remember, we're not there to solve someone's problems. We're not there to tell someone what to do. We're here to help them develop autonomy, agency, and empowerment. This was just about a month ago. I said, Zara, wow, I'm going to just keep those 3. That's so good for you. Yes. Yeah. So Zara gets the credit. Autonomy, agency, and empowerment. And so, Jorge, as you were digging that hole and getting to the root of things and understanding why you felt the way you do, because there are reasons why we feel what we feel. Instead of being just told anger is wrong, sadness is wrong, fear is wrong, there's a reason we feel that. Why is that? And is there now another way to look at it? And the excitement in being a therapist is seeing clients figure out who they are and how they want to navigate things. And then we're sort of cheerleaders and supporters as we root for our clients to develop to be who they really are, who they've always been to, and really who they want to be.
That's powerful. So I'm going to take you on your offer again.
Okay.
Let's do it.
All right. Well, Jorge, it's nice to meet you. My name is Glenn, and you can call me by my first name. What we talk about here is confidential. I know we already talked about that earlier, what that means. So this is a judgment-free zone. I'm going to ask you a lot of questions. You don't have to answer anything you don't want to answer. Just remember that the more light we shed on things, the more we can see, and I can help you see. Okay? And so, Jorge, how old are you?
45. Legally, I'm 45.
Oh, interesting. Tell me about that.
So I was born in Mexico, La
Mhm.
Piedad, Michoacán, to be exact. Shout out
In
to my
Michoacán.
peeps.
All right.
And so the story behind it was being born to my dad, who I lost in 3 years now, and my mom, the second oldest of eight.
Second oldest of eight.
Yes, my older brother resembles my dad a lot, and when he was younger, apparently he was like a mini him. So
he was a what?
A mini of my
a
dad.
mini him.
A mini
Mm-hmm.
him, yeah. So
what's his first name?
Juan. He's Junior.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Juan Junior,
Juan
and
Jr.
he's mini Juan.
Mini Juan. Yeah. So my grandma, my dad's mom, who my parents were living with at the time, embraced that and pretty much promised everything, all their inheritance to him because he just resembled my dad. When I was born, my mom's dad said, "Oh no, you're not my son. You resemble your mom's side." And
say that again. Your mom's dad?
My dad's. No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. Your dad's mom said you don't resemble him. You're more from your mom's side, and you were set apart at an early age.
Yes,
is different. The paternal family, was that a rejection, or what was that like?
I don't know what it was, but to me, I didn't know that story. When I first heard that story, I felt a sense of rejection. I felt a sense of.
Had you felt it before you knew this story? Had you felt that?
I don't remember. I don't remember that much.
Okay.
I do remember going to visit my dad's mom, and she was the one.
What's her name?
Her name was.
Or what did you call her?
Minena.
Minena.
Socorro.
Socorro.
Yes. She passed. That was the first time that I saw my dad being vulnerable. The first time that I saw him in tears was when his mom passed.
How old were you when your grandmother?
No, I don't remember.
Were you a boy?
No, I was an adult.
Okay.
I was an adult. It was probably maybe 12, 13, maybe even 15 years ago.
Okay.
This happened.
And I'm going to ask you a few more questions. And what's your mom's first name?
Graciela.
Graciela. With the legally 45, did you, and I know we're talking personal here just for me and you, did you cross with somebody else's papers or?
My understanding, yes.
Okay.
So my dad crossed, my dad and mom crossed with the coyote back then.
Mm-hmm.
And we crossed with someone else's documentation.
Did your parents come a few months or years previous to you?
My dad did. We were in caravan with my mom and other people, and then I think we were waiting for my. So it was my dad, my grandfather, my mom's dad, my uncle, my mom's brother, and then my dad. Those are the three pioneers of our family.
And you said your mom's dad, your dad, and your uncle on your mom's side.
Yes, yeah.
Those were the first.
Yeah.
three.
So the order was grandpa, uncle, dad, and
1, 2, 3.
unfortunately they passed in that order. My grandfather passed away first.
Oh wow!
My uncle, then recently was my dad.
And so, what year would you say your dad came to the U.S.?
Oh gosh, 78. I want to say 78.
And what year were you born?
Legally 77.
Legally 77. So your dad, and in real life, what year were you born?
I mean, legally it's 77. I've asked my mom, I've asked my grandma, I've asked other people, and I get different stories.
Oh, okay.
So now I've embraced my legal birthday.
You're going with 77.
Yeah, so legally it's September 30th. My mom says it's September 23rd.
Oh, okay.
But
okay.
they say the year doesn't change, so.
Okay. And then, so did you come, and when did your mom come to the U.S. with you and the...
78, yeah.
And so you came as a baby.
Yeah, it came months, yeah.
And how would you describe your dad in 3 words or phrases?
Hardworking, determined. never gave up.
Do you love him? I know he's passed away.
I miss him, and many times I wish that I had him here, so we have a lot of conversations about the Dodgers.
Yeah.
Before we started recording. Yeah, I told my dad many times that I loved him.
Did he love you?
I don't doubt it. I wish I would have heard it more. And we talked about this in the previous episode that culturally, um, I guess children sort of grow up with the notion that it's not explicitly told to us that we're loved, but it's our assumption that we're loved.
Sort of show, not tell.
Yeah.
It's nice to show and tell, isn't it? We definitely want to show.
Yeah,
I mean, right?
yeah.
Shakespeare said, "They do not love who do not show their love," and
No.
you know, I love that line. But it's nice to hear it too.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, tell me about your mom. 3 words or phrases to describe her.
My mom is faith,
Faith,
family,
family,
spiritual.
and spiritual. How does that align with you? Faith, family, and spiritual.
I've gotten my faith through my mom.
Is that an important role in your life?
Very important, yeah. Oh, yes. Very, very important.
And what do you take from your dad that's a part of you?
It's definitely the hard work. I think it's translated into my definition of hard work. I've been in the early childhood education field for 23 years. In the past 6 years, I've gone to teach higher ed at Cal State LA and East LA College. And when I first started that, my dad would say how proud he was of me because, he knows that I'm a hard worker. And it was the sense of pride in me of, yeah, Dad, just like you. I saw the hard work. My dad would sell oranges. We grew up in poverty, welfare, food stamps.
Sure.
But he always found a way. He worked hard.
Now, Jorge, as you've come into therapy and taken a chance, I know that you mentioned you've worked with a couple of the therapists. What are some things you're hoping to gain out of our experience together?
I want to understand myself. I want to know what makes it difficult for me to be genuine, Jorge. I find myself wearing a lot of hats in my career. One of them being here, the host of this podcast. And a lot of times I find myself fighting back a lot of emotion.
Is that the primary reason you're coming to understand yourself?
Yes.
Then let me ask you, at any time in future sessions, you can tell me other things that you're hoping to get out of it. Who is genuine, Jorge?
In my lens?
In your lens.
I have to reference back to my faith. Christ.
Faith.
Yeah.
Christ. That's the genuine Jorge. Any other things you'd like to say about genuine Jorge, especially the genuine Jorge that is hard for you to manifest? Because you said you want to know why it's difficult to.
The genuine person that I want to be is not be afraid to show my emotion. So if you said something to me that hurt me, I don't want to be afraid to tell you that you hurt me.
I love that. So it would be almost a combination. You tell me if I'm on the right track. Almost a combination of being vulnerable and courageous.
Being vulnerable is something that, culturally speaking, as a
Mm-hmm.
man, I can't be. And that's ingrained in me. So
You can't be, or you have not been able to be.
I have not been able to be because I've normalized that I shouldn't be.
Why did I change the conjugation to have not been able to be?
Because I want to be. And I know that there's a part of me that in certain roles of my life, I can be vulnerable. Like as a father, I can be very vulnerable with my girls. As a husband, in certain things, I can be very vulnerable with my wife. In other aspects of my life, like my career, I can't because I'm a hardworking man.
Where can't you be? Go ahead and just give me one where you're not and you wish you could be in work, and then we'll talk a little bit about courage.
In retrospect, I've lost a lot of relationships because I wasn't genuine, because I couldn't tell you that you hurt me, or I couldn't tell you that I didn't agree with the choice that you made.
And what did you do instead of
I
saying that?
I agreed against my own will. I suppressed my own happiness. I suppressed my own. I suppressed myself because I didn't want to disappoint you, or I didn't want to lose what you and I had. So to me, it was okay for me to just to go with the flow because I wanted that so bad.
Where did that come from?
I
Where do you first remember doing that? Where you suppressed a part of yourself because you wanted to go with the flow, because you valued something you had. And your fear was, if I showed a difference with this person, that they may not like me and the relationship would end, instead of the relationship might take a turn and pivot.
I'm going to take you back to what has been probably the most perplexed experience of my life. And it happened with my first grade teacher. Again, born in Mexico to an immigrant family, coming to United States, we moved from South Central to Watts to eventually settling into East LA Boyle Heights area. Not knowing a word in English, my first grade teacher changed my name from Jorge to George. And George is spelled George. My name is Jorge, Jorg. So she told me, and I remember this, you know Mexico, you US, you George. And I remember going home enraged, telling my mom, and she said, remember, we don't want to get deported. Si la maestra te dice que eres George, eres George.
Eres George. Lo que ella te diga.
Yeah,
Porque ella manda.
Yes, I told my dad, and my dad said, pues ni modo, mijo.
Ni modo,
Ni modo, mijo. And I remember that being one of those times where I felt like, but that's not me. And the more that I think about it, I think into how much I had to assimilate from then on, because I wanted to fit in, because I was told not to be above the radar, right? Because we could have gotten deported. So to me, my belief at that time, and I'm thinking, is if I say something against someone of authority like a teacher, I'm putting my family at risk.
At 6 years old, sin documentos, we can see where that fear was almost reality.
Definitely, yeah.
Right? And so as you internalize that, what a great, poignant example, and painful. I feel for that little 6-year-old Jorgito, right? That had to give up his name and pronunciation, even spelling.
Yeah. My whole identity.
Their whole identity.
Yep.
And then as you talk to parents who would have your back, they said, ni modo, mijo, así es, así tiene que ser. So as an adult, do you have any more power now than you had when you were 6 years old?
I think I do, in the sense that I'm more vocal. I usually will correct people when it's like, George, no, it's Jorge.
Mm-hmm.
And not out of disrespect, but more of like, this is who I am.
This is who I am.
I'm okay. I'm Mexican.
This is right. And this is informational. And this is what I prefer that you call me.
Yeah. So
how does it feel when you do that? When you say, I'm Jorge?
It feels good when I felt that I had that voice and I had that opportunity. I felt empowered. I felt like I had a say into who I was. Right. Growing up, it was like, no, you're George.
Now, are there sometimes today when you feel, if you are now today, not 6-year-old Jorge, Are there times today where you feel if you spoke up, you would hurt someone, like your family, you were saying, or even hurt yourself in an education or a professional opportunity?
Yeah, definitely. I think I'm gonna be harsh on myself because I've learned to be very hard on myself. I felt like a coward in not speaking up for myself, and again, it was the perception that people get from that. It's like, you know, no, you're courageous because you're protecting your family. The way that I see it is like I was a coward because I didn't stand up for myself. As an educator of young children and adults, to me, my philosophy involves empowerment, and it goes back to that. You know,
Could both of those things be true? Can we live in a
definitely.
world where?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Where, I mean, in terms of self-compassion, to be able to say, I took it on the chin for the team.
Yeah.
I did this for my family. And I don't like what it did to me. And one thing I want to suggest as we just sort of wrap up our first session for today is maybe between now and the next time we meet, you can either see if a new opportunity presents itself where you're faced with, can I be vulnerable in being me and be courageous in being me and do something, right? Where you have the voice. Now I'm going to throw a little wrinkle into this, but I'm going to start it with a question. Could there ever be a time in the short term when to survive, we tell genuine Jorge, you're still you, but I need to get to this committee meeting in one piece, and I'll let you out a little later when it's safer.
Wow.
What are your thoughts on that?
Whew, I never thought of it that way. I think a lot of it again goes back to being raised in either black or white. It's either yes or it's no. It's nothing in between. Gray doesn't exist. And the interesting thing though is that I can talk to others, my students. I can talk to my parents. I can talk to anyone about research, reading that I've done that can help you feel empowered to understand that there is a gray scale and there is the gray side of it, but I can't do it within myself. And that's where, to me, I find therapy to be that bridge to help me say there is gray.
There is gray.
Right? You can.
And to be able to live in that gray and to have peace with that gray. And that if I held a little genuine me, because I want to get to interview number 2, I'm not selling out.
Right.
I'm getting to interview number 2. Right? And I know what I'm doing, and I am still me. And I'm going to be me 99% of the time. But there's a little game of life that I may have to play, and it doesn't mean I'm a sellout. Because if I always throw the genuine me out there 100% all the time, it may stop me from having an opportunity.
Oh, yes. I completely agree with that. Yes.
So that's a thought I want to leave you with. And if an opportunity doesn't come up between now and our next session, Jorge, would you be willing to maybe just come in with 2 or 3 other examples? We talked about 1 at 6 at different stages of your life where you were faced with the vulnerability, and courage, and what do I do and how do I navigate it? We could take a look at that together. Would that be okay as we work on our goal for you to understand yourself and why it's difficult to be genuine Jorge? There's some reasons it is difficult. how we can bring it out and navigate it living in the gray world that we're in. Does that sound good, Jorge?
Yes.
Awesome.
Do I leave my co-payment with you?
You're a Rio. You're in Rio. It was all covered.
So thank you, Glenn, for this session. It's sort of, I'm going to tell you how I felt
Okay.
through it. I felt uncomfortable, and that sense of being uncomfortable is not bad. I'm learning to feel comfortable with the uncomfortable, and I've read that in many therapists that have written books. I've seen that in podcasts. I've heard it in podcasts, and it's like, okay, I have to understand that feeling uncomfortable is not a reason for me to run away, which is what I've learned to do and internalize and normalize, more importantly, right? It's a way for me to say, I want to get better. And for me to get better, I have to deal with the uncomfortable. And that uncomfortable comes sometimes with pain and tears.
And most growth comes when we're in an uncomfortable situation. If we take on a new job, go to a new school, have a child, start a new relationship, right? We leave our comfort zone. Sometimes what I tell my clients, come into a session is, for those that've had braces, I say it's sort of like getting your teeth adjusted a little bit. When you leave it, it may hurt a little bit, and there was some discomfort, and maybe that's a sign that we did something, that we touched an area of your life that you may want to adjust. And adjustment and pivoting can be a little uncomfortable.
Yeah, one of our guests from season 2, Jim Goodrich, he teaches at Cal State LA too. Really good friend of mine. I don't know where he heard it from, but I heard it through him. He says, if it doesn't challenge you, you don't know. How does it go? If it doesn't challenge you, it won't make you grow. Something along those lines.
Sure. Sure.
Understanding that growth is challenging yourself, which means being uncomfortable at times. And the more uncomfortable we feel, it's about embracing that because we want to change from that. Again, working with young children, the parallel is the caterpillar, right?
Right.
The caterpillar going into its chrysalis and then metamorphosis into a butterfly. The beautiful butterfly we appreciated, but to get there, it went to a very uncomfortable phase of being in that chrysalis. I want to thank you for this. Is just great. I want to schedule another with you off the camera. But what advice can you give for our audience out there that is contemplating seeing one? One of the things that my mom told me when I opened up to my parents about therapy was, well, why did you come and talk to me? Ven habla conmigo porque yo soy tu madre. I'm your mother. And it's like, I didn't tell her, but I did think with total respect, but I loved my mom, was you contributed to that. Not intentionally.
Right.
And it's all, and again, I understand why my parents were the way they were. I get it. It has to do with maybe intergenerational trauma, intergenerational abuse. All of that was not my parents' fault. And the way they raised us is not a reflection of who their genuine person are. Right. So I get that.
They did what they knew.
That's all they knew. And I can't blame them for that, right? But I can say I have a resource here as a college student. If I want to change, then I can get that resource. So what advice would you give our audience to seek out that help?
Well, let me back up a teeny bit. So I think some mothers and fathers feel when their children go into therapy that it's a bad reflection on them, that it means that they failed in some way, because they still have that subconscious notion if somebody goes to therapy, something is wrong. Right. And so I once had a client tell me, because her son was doing some things in the military she was seeing on social media that she didn't like, and I was trying to help her let go and just let him be, even if he made a few mistakes. And she said, but my son is my report card. When people see my son, that's a reflection on what I did as a parent. So I think that that's what some of the resistance is with parents. And so I think even to let our parents know if I'm a real student that I'm going to therapy. First of all, you don't need their permission, but and we can't talk to them. But if you did decide to tell your parents, you tell them, I'm coming for me. True, some of the issues are going to be to heal some things that happened in your family of origin, but I'm coming for me. The other thing I wanted to say was when we were talking about the discomfort in therapy, something that is really important. I do want my clients to feel safe, and I want them to feel some comfort and discomfort at the same time, as we were talking about the gray. And so in therapy, what will happen to those that are listening that haven't started yet, or there will be some comfort, there will also be a lot of safety you feel.
Yes.
Because you're going to tell your deepest, darkest secrets, and the person, your therapist, is still going to like you. They're still going to love you. They're still going to be rooting for you, and they're not going to judge you. And that will help you endure the discomfort that you feel. And your therapist is going to work hard with that balance, because if you feel too uncomfortable, they know that you're not going to come back.
Right.
And they want you to come back so that they can help you. So other messages, what the question is, go ahead and
what would you like to tell our audience to seek mental health resources if that's what they feel they need to do?
What I would say is, when your car breaks down, you go to a mechanic. If you have a plumbing issue, you don't say, Dad, can you have to fix this unless your dad's a plumber, right? It's okay to go to someone that studied something and dedicated their life to it, to help you in that regard. Remember what I said about autonomy, agency, and empowerment. You're not going to go to therapy so somebody tells you what to do. You're going to go so that you have a place. It's almost like an oral real-time diary. And the person, as you're writing your diary and talking, they may ask you a few questions that you haven't asked yourself. And those questions can lead to discovering who you are and who you really want to be, so that you can give yourself permission to live a full life and be just like you want to be a genuine Jorge, for them to be the genuine them.
Love that. Wow. Thank you so much. It was a very deep conversation. I really appreciate it. I hope we found some meaning into that. We're going to drop the link for Real Hondo students where we can find all the information to seek mental health resources. Until next time, have a good one.
Capture the passion.